Evening all, how are you doing? Yes, week 9 of lockdown. Just a quick check on the old hair. We've moved down to the Oscar Werner in Colombo hairstyle. We're now heading towards the Peter Stringfellow. Um, yeah, so that's where we are at the moment. Anyway, got a couple of things I want to discuss with you tonight. First up, book review. So I finished this one a couple of weeks ago, Alistair Cook, the autobiography, because I'm kind of into my cricket. What can I say? I mean, it's a standard ghost-written sports biography thing, but what I find interesting is that it's quite dark in tone. It deals a lot with the psychology of playing sport at the highest level, particularly a game like cricket, which over the years has had its fair share of people who are manically depressed or have some kind of psychological issues going on with them. And Cook kind of addresses that. Not him, I mean, he's always been rock solid, but he does talk about that feeling of self-doubt, of the loneliness and the endurance of going on these long tours, and the psychological pressures of being a batsman at the highest level, because with a bowler you can bowl one bad ball and he gets hit to the boundary, but then you can always set yourself up for the next ball to do better. As a batsman, you get out for like just a handful of runs or no runs at all. You failed. That's your job. That was your one job for that day, maybe even 2 days, and you failed at it. And he talks about the psychology of that. It's quite a dark book in that respect, because tonally it reminded me of Pete Townshend's Who I Am, although without the really dark stuff that Townsend was talking about in his book. But that kind of it's not all wine and roses at the top of these professions. So would I recommend it as a book? Well, as a kind of great literature, no. You have to be kind of into cricket, but I thought if you're into sports psychology and what makes top level sportsmen tick, and the kind of the mental pressures, if you're into that side of it, I'd definitely give it a read. There's some good stuff about the fractious relationship with Kevin Peterson as well. So yeah, that's it's a bit of a recommendation if you're into that sort of thing. So during this COVID-19 outbreak, the news has been dominated by it, and most news stories involve either various claims about COVID-19, about what we should do in response to it, how to manage, and just was it potential vaccines, potential cures, what should be done next. And frankly, there's nothing I can add that other commentators haven't said already. But now I'm starting to see, now that the lockdown is being eased, I can see some of the old issues coming to the fore again. And I think it's a good time now to start addressing the culture war again. So there's a decision recently that Joe Rogan's going to leave YouTube and go exclusively to Spotify, and also Sargon of Akkad may be doing the same thing. Although I think in Sargon's case, he might be booted from YouTube because Carlos Maza is making noises about one alleged indiscretion that Sargon made during a live stream. And we all know how Maza operates. So this is, I'll give you my perspective on this. I think it's a retreat. It's another retreat. Moving to Spotify, I think, particularly in Sargon's case, is yet another retreat. We were told this with Twitter. We're all going to get booted off Twitter and Facebook, so we're all going to have to migrate to Minds. And I set up a Minds account in the early days when it was just happening. And I haven't been that impressed with it. It just seems like a refugee camp filled with tinfoil hat brigade people and crypto fascists. It's not really building the kind of audience I wanted to engage with. And it feels too self-contained. It doesn't feel like it's got that kind of reach. And I feel that, yes, we're all getting, there's a big purge coming down the line. More people on the right and even in the centre are going to get booted off, kicked for all kinds of minor indiscretions. At the moment, we're being suppressed. We can't grow our channels. We're making videos. We're allowed to upload them still, but they're just being quashed in the algorithms and the searches. And everything else. And I just feel that moving to other sites, but this has been talked about for years, but for me it seems like we're in a refugee camp if we go somewhere else, because it's Winston Churchill said after Dunkirk, wars are not won with retreats. And just saying, okay, we'll go somewhere else where they won't get us, is a retreat. And they will come and get you. We saw this with YouTube's demonetization. Okay, so you're going to demonetize me. Fair enough. I will have a PayPal account and people can donate to there. And then PayPal shuts down. And then go, okay, we'll go to Patreon instead. And then Patreon shuts various people's accounts down. And then we're kind of looking around and going to all kinds of weird and wacky money handling sites. Again, it's retreat after retreat after retreat, and it won't stop. It won't stop because everywhere is going to be a temporary refuge. And this is how the left work. You know, they will not stop until every single one of us is purged from the public discourse. So with that in mind, and this is something I've been mulling over for some time now, and I think we need to develop better strategies and tactics. I mean, I've been saying this for a while. We need to develop strategies. We need to work better. But I think, you know, it's this is where I see the online right, or the right in general at the moment. Yes, in a couple of countries, nominally the right won elections and are theoretically in charge of running countries, but as we've seen, they're very much they're being held hostage by special advisory groups, non-governmental groups, quangos, advisory committees, the media, academia, you name it. You know, they kind of can't act in a way that you would call properly mainstream right wing or properly conservative. They're just not allowed to be in this kind of the media environment, and also with the all the special advisory groups and all the special interest groups and all the lobby groups that orbit the government. And so that leaves the online right. And I said, we're so good. We're so good at making jokes, and we're so good at spotting problems, and we're so good at cutting out the nonsense and speaking truth, you know, in the face of the lies of the left. We're very good at that, but we're not very good at, okay, let's take the fight back to them. Now, we've been thrown a lifeline. I know there's a lot of people on the right, possibly the libertarian right, I'm thinking of off the top of my head, who are down on the normies. You know, oh, the normies, you know, they're just in league with the left. Well, they're not, because the normies keep voting against. When given a chance to vote in elections, they vote against the progressive, the radical left. But at the same time, you know, the normies have what information's coming in heavily filtered. They don't perhaps have the wider scope or access to alternative voices and mainstream right-wing voices that you and I might have. And that's because, you know, our algorithms are being squashed. We're being demonized in the mainstream media. And so I want to develop something. This is going to be I'm not offering any solutions tonight in this video, but I want people to start thinking about, I'm trying to find a good word for it, but it's pragmatism. You know, it's practical. And what I mean by pragmatism isn't capitulation, but more a kind of way of you look at a problem and you break down the problem, hopefully into a manageable and implementable policy or procedure, something that you can implement. So you take a problem of, you know, we're being silenced on these platforms. And so you say, that's the problem. Now we start breaking it down into things you can do to fix the problem. I'm sick and tired. I mean, I must admit, I'm getting fed up with the kind of theorizing and lamenting the situation and saying, "Oh, it's all over." I hate pessimism at the best of times, and I just think, well, you either try and do your best to solve the problem, or you just sit there moaning. And I know where I'd rather be. So I'm hoping I want to encourage people to start thinking about what the working title is: practical conservatism. But I just don't want it to be just conservative. I want to bring in libertarians, those on the mainstream right who perhaps aren't so conservative, but they're definitely against the left, aren't, and the centrists as well. And just think that the working title is practical conservatism, but I want practical in the title because I want us to now move from just complaining about the problem and identifying the problem. Okay, we've identified that. Identification, diagnosis, cure. This is so we need to start thinking about what you and I and all of us in our sphere can do to implement things a lot better. Now, we saw this, one of my political heroes, Douglas Murray, did this very well with Sir Roger Scruton. He identified the problem. Scruton was being smeared by a dishonest journalist, and he badgered away, and he used what he could, what influence he had, what voice he had, and he never stopped. He kept badgering to get George Eaton to capitulate and release the unedited tapes to vindicate Scruton. And that's the kind of thing I'm thinking of. You have a problem, which is you don't just go, oh, a prominent member of the right's been thrown under a bus by the wets and the milkies on his own side, and the left have done a smear hatchet job. No, you've got to hit back. You've got to add your voice to clear their name, to vindicate them. That's what I'm talking about. And so we need to think of what's the problem. We're being squashed on YouTube and Twitter and all kinds of social media. What's the solution? There are numbers. I mean, there's this moving to Spotify is one potential solution, but again, I see that as a retreat. Okay, so we retreat to Spotify, but then we've got to regroup around that and push back and try and get back out there. Because remember, YouTube is the big player. Because from my point of view, why I'm sticking with YouTube is that for convenience in a lot of ways, because I can watch, or I have been watching, the political content, but I don't just watch political content. I want to go and watch history, sport, entertainment. My kids like all the kids stuff and the sports stuff on YouTube as well. So it's very convenient, so, okay, now I've done this. Now I've got to go to Spotify and then log in there and watch a whole bunch of other stuff. It's an extra layer of complexity, and I'm not sure maybe in the long term, but I'm not sure in the short term it's going to the Spotify migration is going to grow a channel. It's going to just take the people who are already on the channel, or most of them, but it's not going to engage the casual viewers, and it's not going to grow an audience. And it's a temporary respite because they will come after Spotify at some point. So yeah, let's just begin the process of talking about the kind of practical things, looking at identifying something that can be achieved. I mean, if you're saying, okay, what I want is the whole breakdown of the state, and we live in little city states and all that, that is so far beyond where we are at the moment. It's let's just try something. What's in our immediate purview that we can change? Like Jordan Peterson says, tidy your room first. And I think, and now if you've got your room tidy, then you look at the room next door. You look at somewhere else within your reach that you can change. So, yeah, practical conservatism, that's the working title for now, until I can think of something better, or if you can think of something better. But let's begin this process. Let's work out what is the thing that we can achieve and go for it. And go for it. Put down the knives that we have for each other. Yeah, Groyper's not welcome. The various factions that we had over the last 2-3 years that have kind of splintered a little bit, we need to come back together and advance our aims, and they're very laudable aims, an advancement and really think of the strategy. So, yeah, hopefully this is the beginning of a process. But until next time, take care, and yeah, I'll see you next time.